The regular season games of Stage 1 are over, and I'm here to bring you my Week 5 Power Rankings breakdown. After 8 entertaining series in this final week of the first stage, we now have our 8 playoff sides, who takes the stage from Thursday through to Sunday to crown our first stage champion for 2019 Overwatch League season. With this in mind, let's see how both the playoff battles and other games have affected my rankings as I break down why I ranked each team where I did. Starting from the bottom, we have our first change in weeks as the Florida Mayhem dropped 2 spots to 20, whilst the Washington Justice and LA Valiant make up these places, both rising 1 position to 19 and 18 respectively. The main factor for this change is the result of the matchup between the Mayhem and Justice that went 3-2 in Washington's favour. On reflection, Florida actually played better throughout the series, but most of the time threw away great positions due to terrible team coordination and ultimate usage. In the end, they had a good opportunity to achieve a reverse sweep, but inexplicably played a confusing Hammond 3-3 comp that shifted all the momentum back to the Justice, who to their credit capitalised on this to win their first game of the season. By no means are these teams any good at the moment, but with this and another solid performance against Paris, as well as the new acquisition of Arc from New York, show Washington trending upwards, whilst Florida going to the break after 2 bad losses to Boston and Washington. The other team I've kept in this grouping is the LA Valiant, who didn't play this week and were confirmed as the only team to be winless this stage. But looking back at their strength of schedule, it is clear that they had some very difficult opponents, but as a team they have far more quality than the 2 teams below them. The next few teams I will be discussing all suffer mainly from a lack of consistency in their quality and performance, but has left them with records under 500. At 17 and 16, with the Hangzhou Spark and Houston Outlaws, who've swapped positions from last week. At 15, down 5 are the London Spitfire, behind the Paris Eternal, who dropped 3 places to 14, and then the Shanghai Dragons, who actually rise 1 spot to 13. The Spark didn't play this week, but I've still dropped them a spot as they did lose to the Outlaws earlier in this season, and looking back at their victories, the only standout is against the Gladiators, which was when they were at their worst. With talent like Ria and Goushue, this team can improve a lot next stage, but they'll need to sort out their on-stage nerves and perform at a more consistent level moving forward. Houston made their game with Atlanta rather competitive, which is the other reason why they did rise, with some great coordination around EMP shatter combos from Muma and Dante. But it was this combo that they became very reliant on as the series progressed, so they'll need to ensure they don't become so one-dimensional and predictable in the new meta. London and Paris are 2 of the biggest droppers this week after pretty dismal Week 5 performances. London did not at all turn up against the Dynasty squad that many expected them to beat. In particular, Gesture seriously held the team back this stage with his subpar Rhine that Fisher abused the whole series. So given they lost to the 2 teams above them, this seems like an adequate spot. Paris meanwhile continued their poor run of form. They did beat Washington, but it was in a terrible manner by a score of 2-1, looking only really dominant on the final map Dorado. They did try to make the Philly series competitive at the start, and from what I saw, they are a better team than the Spitfire, narrowly at the moment, given their hard strength of schedule. Lastly, the Dragons, despite not playing, move up 1 place, so I don't think I gave them enough credit for beating London last week. So I'm happier now with a new position, as they look to find consistency next stage with the foundations of a stable roster in place. My next group of teams is quite large, includes some of the long shot playoff shouts. At 12, the Guangzhou Charge fall 3 places, behind the Chengdu Hunters at 11, and the Seoul Dynasty at 10, who rise 4 and 3 positions respectively. Next is the Dallas Fuel falling 3 spots to 9. And lastly, the Boston Uprising and Atlanta Reign, the first moving up 4 spaces, and the latter slipping down twice, for a second week in a row. All these teams have shown their quality in a majority of their games, unlike the large grouping below them, with half making the playoffs, and the others just on the cusp. Starting with the only slight outlier, I finally gave the Hunters the respect they deserve with their positioning. For a team who is uncomfortable in the GOATS meta, to come away with 3 wins playing off-meta comps is incredibly impressive, and they rounded off an excellent Stage 1 by edging out the Atlanta Reign in a fun and exciting series, which bodes well for them if DPS return to the meta moving forward. The teams dropping places are the Charge, Fuel and Atlanta, who all dropped mainly for their losses. Guangzhou just didn't really seem to give the Titans much trouble, and even though they are a talented side, 2 of their 3 victories this stage have come against Florida and the Valiant, so given they lost to Chengdu earlier, a spot below them seems to fit. Dallas shockingly choked an almost guaranteed spot in the playoffs, after being the wrong side of a reverse sweep, so Boston sit above them for this, and they just slot in above the team they beat earlier in the Dynasty. Atlanta did eventually make the playoffs, hence their relatively high placing, but the Chengdu game highlighted the declining level of performance that's been facing the team over the past few weeks, with some analysts comfortable saying that they are the worst team in the Stage 1 playoffs, off the back of an easier strength of schedule. The Uprising and Dynasty did what they had to make the playoffs, and both looked very impressive in their wins over the past 2 weeks, that seems to have given them momentum into the playoffs. Their positioning slots them above who they've beaten and below who they've lost to, which seems to work out perfectly for this part of my rankings. Following this large pack are 4 teams who I think are all of high quality, but not good enough to challenge the top 2 just yet. At 6, the Gladiators continue to rise, this time by 2 places, the same increase as the Philadelphia Fusion at 5, whilst the Toronto Defiant and San Francisco Shock are again at 4 and 3 for a second straight week. The LA Gladiators have unfortunately finished their Stage 1 already, and it just came at the wrong time. Due to some player swaps and communication issues, the side dropped too many maps in the middle of the stage that they couldn't win enough late on to make the stage playoffs. As long as last week's quality of performance can be replicated moving forward, there is no doubt in my mind that this is a top side, which could have been one of the better challengers to the top 2. The Fusion at 5 might surprise some, given on the whole they haven't been playing at the highest level of late, especially on Rhinegoats, which Sado looks particularly uncomfortable on. That being said, I'm of the opinion that had the Fusion had Boombox for all of the stage, the team could have ridden their comfortable schedule to a shocking 7-0 record. Ultimately, good teams win even when they play poorly, and this fits Philly perfectly, but they'll need Carpe and Boombox to carry if they want to find playoff success. Toronto and San Francisco remain at 3 and 4 for the reasons I mentioned last week, as well as the fact that I don't believe another team below them has done enough to displace them from these spots. Finally, we have the same top 2 again in the Vancouver Titans and the New York Excelsior, just pipping them to the 1 spot. New York did not play this week, so it was up to whether the Titans' performance against the Charge could force their way into the top spot, and blimey did it cause me some headaches. Vancouver's performance was regimented, proficient, and nowhere near as competitive as their last meeting with Guangzhou, as they locked in the top seed in the stage playoffs with a quick 4-0 win. Despite having a better record, I just think the Overwatch League experience and consistent professionalism of the Excelsior is the only real difference, so until Bumper stops his feed moments or the Titans beat them, I will keep New York at the summit. Before I go, I would just mention that Stage 1 playoff matches have just been officially announced after Shock beat Seoul 3-0 in a tiebreaker match and Toronto won, but also lost for coin toss. Read that how you want. So these are your fixtures. With that, I'd like to thank you for watching. You can expect my playoff predictions soon. Otherwise, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed for more Overwatch League content moving forward.